throws, corner of the end zone, touchdown, Parker. Kickoff by Xavien Howard. Tagovailoa trying to make up for it, fires to the end zone, touchdown! That hard work.
What's good, Fin Nation? What's good? First thing I want to say is thank you to all of you for getting us 2K, and what better way to celebrate than by having one of the first guests we ever had on the channel, one of my favorite people, let alone guests in this whole Dolphins draft community, Dante Collinelli from Blue Chip Scouting. You can also catch him. He's from the Brawl Network as well. You can catch him on the Draft Brawl. You can just search it on iTunes, Spotify, any major podcast outlet. And also you can catch him on Dolphins Talk. He does the weekly podcast there over as well. Dante, how are you doing tonight? Thanks for joining me, brother.
Yeah, man. Happy to be back. Congrats on the 2K, by the way. That's awesome. Glad to see you guys are thriving over here. I always love coming on talking ball.
Appreciate it, man. Always love having you on to talk ball. And I got to jump right into it because my subscriber, this is a pro Tua channel, my friend. All right. Tua Tagovailoa slander is not withstood here. So with that said, I want to get your thoughts so far on, like, let's start off with your assessment of his play so far before we get into all the drama and nonsense behind it.
I think Tua is doing what has been asked of him. And I think that that's an important context that we have to look at, in that what are the Dolphins asking him to do versus what is expected of him, right? Because the natural inclination of fans with draft classes and with rookie quarterbacks is to instantly compare those players, right? Like they want to, Justin Herbert, they want to compare him to Herbert, they want to compare him to Burrow. And when you watch those other two players, and this is not a knock on Tua, it's just the truth, those offenses and those coaching staffs just give those guys more to do than the Dolphins give Tua to do, right? Like the Chargers are willing to let Justin Herbert throw the ball 40, 50 times down the field, let him push the ball deep. And Joe Burrow was pretty much the entire Cincinnati Bengal offense until he tore his ACL. So you have to put that into context. So I think Tua is doing what they want him to do well. Now, we can have a conversation about whether or not they should open up the offense more and let him do more. I think both you and I will probably agree that that's something that we want to see. So the question that we have to ask ourselves as Dolphins fans and analysts is the offense closed off because they don't think Tua's good enough to open it up right now? Or is it closed off because Chan Gailey's a million years old and he's stubborn? I don't know the answer to that question. So that's going to be seriously. That could be it. I mean, because Fitzpatrick enters the game against Denver, and all of a sudden we're chucking 25-yard bombs. And,
brother,
where was that the first three?
Brother,
quarters?
I'm gonna use the word archaic later on, so now I don't feel bad after you saying a million years. So that's all I was laughing at. No, I agree with you.
Yeah, so like you have to ask the question, is like it. And we'll probably get into this, but like they're like, oh, Tua gives us the best chance to win. Well, then let the kid throw the ball around the yard a little bit. This is the most efficient, accurate quarterback in the history of college football. And look, he was never had a big arm. Never. It's not his game. I don't expect him to go out there dropping 50-yard bombs every play. He's not Justin Herbert. That's not his game. They're different players. But like, let's jazz up the offense a little bit here. But I think Tua is doing well for what he's been given. The Denver game was just not great all around. Everything around him was bad. And then the Rams game, honestly, is just pretty much just a wash. I mean, that was one of the most boring games I've ever watched in my life. That makes me sad because it's Tua's first start, but it's the truth.
I agree with you. I mean, Herbert's literally coming off. We can agree, you and I'm sure, that their offensive line in Los Angeles is in a better place right now with the additions of Trey Turner and Balaga. Just overall, their weapons, we all love DPP, but when you talk about Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, now Austin Eckler's back. You know what I mean? Like a little bit more consistency over there when guys aren't injured, especially Keenan Allen. He's got more than what Burrow and Tua have to work with. He just threw for 52 times and he just cleared the 300-yard mark. Tua's averaging about 24 attempts right now. He's averaging about 150 yards a game and about a touchdown and a half a game. Well, I think Herbert's averaging about 39 attempts a game right now. Burrow, like you said earlier, he had 60 plus attempts in his second game, right? Yeah. I mean, just ridiculous. But I mean, you even look at Fitz. Fitz is averaging about 31.2 attempts per game. He's averaging about 238 yards, 1.5 touchdowns as well, but he's also averaging about one interception a game. So, I want to ask you something. I didn't want to field this to Richmond Webb on the finish line because he's a former player. I didn't want to put him in the spot. But I want to ask you this because the thing I love about you, Dante, is I watch all 22. I know you watch all 22. So when I have a conversation with you, I know it's not some guy saying he watches film and he really doesn't. So let me ask you this, okay? When you talk about with Tua right now and where he's at, you talked about putting into context, he's doing what he's asked of right now. I wanted to ask you something. His accuracy right now, I noticed, okay, if you go back to the Denver game, all right, I noticed something there, and I actually noticed it a little bit the week before. His accuracy was oddly off. And I know you've watched a ton on this kid at the pro level, that whatever there is available, but also at the collegiate level. Haven't you noticed the last two games? And it's odd because when I first mentioned it, the next week during practice, he popped up with the foot injury. Now he's got the thumb injury. Have you noticed the past two games that, like, there's a couple times where Jakeem had a step on the defender and Tua just oddly overthrew him? Now, I agree with you 110%. His game isn't the bombs, but his game is that touch. He has that special touch we talked about on every level at the collegiate level. And that's not something you forget overnight. I mean, he had it at every level when he needed to against Arizona. Did you notice that the past two games that he started?
I did notice that. It really popped up for me in the Chargers game. I forget what quarter it was in, but there was a play where Devontae Parker was running to I want to say the left sideline, and Tua had pressure, so he had to reset and step up, and Parker's wide open, and Tua just missed him. And I just remember sitting there going that's not a good sign. And that was really when I started to notice Tua, I don't think he played well against the Chargers, if I'm being honest. I didn't love that performance from him because I thought he missed a lot of open throws. He missed a lot of open reads too. And then we get to the Denver game, and look, the Denver game, everybody was bad. The play calling was bad. The receivers were not open, and the offensive line was a problem as well. But you look at what he was missing, right? He missed Parker on that corner route, right, where Parker was wide open. To me right now, and this is where I start to get worried.
And then remember was it that Denver game where he missed that crosser? Remember the wide open crosser? He just stepped up, and I was like, Tua never, and that was an intermediate route. Right. Tua never misses that.
Right. So when I start to get worried about a rookie quarterback, and I'm not there yet with Tua, is that I can deal with you making bad throws as far as you throw an inaccurate pass and it's intercepted, as long as I see that your read is correct. I'm more interested in your process as a rookie than your results. And what I'm starting to see with Tua, and it's not systematic. If you want to see systematic problems, go watch the Eagles and Carson Wentz play. That's a systematic man who cannot read a defense right now. That's not what I'm seeing with Tua, but he almost looks flustered to me. At least that's what I saw in the Denver game. And it just, he didn't seem comfortable. And I get it, right? He's getting rattled. He's getting hit from all over the place. Guys aren't open. First reads aren't there. They're blitzing from different, there was a lot going on in that game. Vic Fangio outcoached the Dolphins. That's just the way it was. But Tua to me is missing things that have nothing to do with his foot and have nothing to do with his thumb. And that's where I start to get concerned is, okay, is he seeing the game well? Because Tua is not going to beat you with his physical traits, right? Like that's just not the quarterback that he is. That's not the quarterback he was at Alabama. You didn't draft him for that. Say what you want about Justin Herbert and his advantages and disadvantages. Dude's got a cannon. He can bail himself out of a bad throw that Tua just simply cannot. But Tua, where he has the advantage, right, is up here, right? Like he's a smarter quarterback. He's anticipatory. He's got really good touch. And the Dolphins offense is really, really simple right now. They're not asking him to do much. So when he starts missing open receivers and dropping his eyes to the pressure, that's when I start to get worried. So yeah, I did notice that. I did notice an accuracy drop off, and I'm hoping he can kind of reset himself this week against the Bengals because, like, again, I did not agree with the decision to bench him, and I don't know, we can get into that if you want, but like, I understand where Flores is coming from. I understand his thought process, even though I disagree with it. I thought it was a really bad decision, but I understand his thought process, right? Because for him as a coach, he's seeing a rookie quarterback that like just isn't seeing the field right now. Now, I'm on the side of the bench that would say, let him play through it. I was a high school basketball player. Shoot your way out of your slump, damn it. So that's where I come from, right? But like Flores saw that, and he's like, look, my quarterback's just not seeing the field right now. So I hope he kind of bounces back for that. So I'm less worried about him missing an open receiver with a throw than I am about me watching the All-22, a novice scout, and going, that guy's open, that guy's open. That's a bigger problem for me. So hopefully he can get that corrected. But yeah, I agree. I think the last two games, the Chargers game and then the Denver game, I think he's missed a lot of easy ones.
Yeah, and I've even pointed out reads that he's missed, and people have said in my comments, well, that might not be open when he throws it, but that's where it comes in. Well, you got to throw and anticipate, throw to where he's going to be open. That's where you got to use your anticipatory. You got to anticipate that window opening, because the one thing he's also got to get acclimated to, especially right now, is he's going from the protection isn't very good at times, whether it's Fitz or Tua. The play calling isn't very good. Let's all be honest with ourselves right now. It's archaic at times, especially situationally. Like I've told people, you can blame Fitz for that Seahawks game and us not scoring points, but you can also blame Chan Gailey a lot for a lot of his third down play calling and a lot of how he called that game as well. Chan Gailey has some blame here to shoulder as well. And the offensive line, you got the run game where, again, you can blame Chan Gailey. He doesn't commit to the run when guys are averaging 3.9, 4.3 yards per carry. Whether it's Gaskin or Breda, all of a sudden Howard starting with the opening carries in the third quarter, and then he gets stuffed. And what do you got to do? Because they know that personnel package screams Jordan Howard run. What do you got to do? Now you got to run a screen with Jordan Howard out of that package to try and keep the coordinator honest, and it gets blown up. Because it's just bad play calling, man. And it's bad personnel decisions. So, all right. And I agree with you, man. I said I understand where Flores is coming from. I just don't agree with it. Because in the sense of play through it, we weren't getting blown out. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, what people seem to forget, Dante, and what we don't, because again, when you go back and watch the All-22, you're like, oh, yeah, the penalty play that got negated. He was starting to put stuff together, and then Jackson negated a penalty. Stuff was starting to go his way, starting to look like he's starting to figure it out, but then we never got to see him, put it fully together, and I don't think anyone around him was doing him favors. You got guys that aren't separating. You got guys that aren't blocking well. Bradley Chubb, Austin Jackson, one of the things we talked about his tape, right? We talked about the Bradley and the Julian Okwars, the AJ Epeneses, how he couldn't handle guys who come across his face. What did Bradley Chubb do all day, all night? Just came across his face, and Austin Jackson looked like a fish out of water, brother.
There was the one rep where Bradley Chubb was going up against Robert Hunt, and it was like they were towards the end zone, and like Bradley Chubb just went straight bull rush into Robert Hunt's gut, and like somewhere there's like a parallel universe, and Bradley Chubb is like still driving Robert Hunt like through the wall at Mile High, man. Like he must have driven him like 9 yards deep. Like he didn't even try to sack the quarterback. He just kept pushing Hunt, and I was like watching the All-22 going, oh my God, he's gonna push him for a first down going the wrong way. it was rough, man. That game for the offensive line was terrible. But like, my big problem with Flores benching Tua is like, we will just literally never know if he would have let it come back in that game. And you drafted this kid at number 5 overall. Look, I'm not going to tell you it was probable. In fact, it was extremely improbable. However, we were down by 10 points with 10 minutes left in the game when you benched him. It's not impossible. You drafted this kid at number 5 overall, and let I remind you that like Tua is one of the more clutch quarterbacks in college football history, and like Alabama blew out a ton of teams, but Tua also played really, really well in a ton of really big games. And like one of the things that makes a franchise quarterback is the ability to rise to the occasion.
Like he did
when you
against
don't
Arizona.
play well. Right. When you don't, and even when you don't play well. You know what I mean? Right? Like Tom Brady, right? The last Super Bowl that he won with New England against the Rams did not play good. But you know what? He drove them right down the field in the fourth quarter, and he won them that damn football game because he's the GOAT, and he's a franchise quarterback. We'll literally just never know if Tua would have had that moment. I'm not saying he would have. I'm not predicting that he would have. But we'll just literally never know because you went to Ryan Fitzpatrick, who threw a god-awful interception in the end zone to Justin Simmons. So that's the part that bothers me. It just feels like the coaching staff has a lack of trust in this player, and that worries me.
Yeah. And, you know, and what people want to forget let's stick with that Brady for a sec. He should, if not for a D Ford offside, he's not even there, my friend.
Hey, look, the GOATs get the calls, man. That's the way it rides.
That's why when people want to hold those phantom interceptions, is what I call them now against Tua, I say, hey, man, show me what matters. Don't show me what could have been, right?
That's right.
Because what's scary, I know you saw the numbers that Matty Infante put up a couple, like last week or whatever, when he put him up against like Andrew Luck, Russell Wilson, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray. He was the only one to have zero. They were all like, I think all of them but one were above 60% completion percentage, but he was not only the only one to have 0 interceptions after 4 games, he was the only one to have a triple-digit passer rating after 4 games, and the only one close to him was Joe Burrow at 89.7. So, and look at how much he was throwing compared to what Tua was throwing. I'm just saying, you know, if Herbert's going to throw 52 times, imagine what Tua could do with 52 attempts. I'm just saying, like, but here's another thing, people, and again, to speak to the volume of this, I keep trying to tell people this. When you're in this more horizontal based offense that we seem to be doing right now with the vertical shots mixed in, you know, because he's taking like comeback routes, he's taking slants. Like the comeback route to Grant is like the most favorite route of Tua right now.
Buddy, if I see Grant have to play through contact on a comeback route one more time, I'm gonna blow. Dude, I'm gonna freak out.
You know what at least we can say? Hey, just all I gotta say to Herbert on that is you can have the biggest arm in the world, but guess what, Herbert? I've seen you miss that throw so many times already at the pro level. Anyways, I just want to say this, man. Can you just put it into context for people? Our offense, though, compared to the way the LA Chargers offense is built, you know, you have a slow day in offense, it's going to look a hell of a lot worse than a slow day in the LA Chargers offense, where you're also probably coming behind from the get-go too as well. Am I wrong? It's way more vertical based than what we're running.
Yeah, it is. But again, it's built to the strength of their quarterback.
The quarterback, yeah.
Right. So Herbert is a much better vertical thrower than Tua, and that you know, that's just the nature of the business. But my problem with our offense is that, like, I cover Temple football, right? So like I cover that team. There are way too many similarities between our offense and their offense in that we're just way too simple. It's just so, it's a comeback to Akeem Grant. It's a back shoulder throw to Parker. Like, can I get it like a 15-yard dig? Like, I'm not asking for a lot here. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
levels concepts.
Like something like a flood. How about a flood? When was the last time you seen a flood concept, man? I haven't seen a flood concept since like week 2. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, and I get it. And this is one of the things that I kind of voiced concern about when Tua became the starter, as much as favor in that conversation is like, I wanted him to be the starter from week 1. I didn't even want to mess with Fitzpatrick. He does not excite me in any way. But the Dolphins group of playmakers, assuming Preston Williams is healthy, they are not built to run the offense that Tua is successful in. You can have one of those guys, right?
EVP.
So Parker, Williams, Gesicki is, he's a slot guy, so he's a little bit different, but you can have one of those guys, right? But the rest of the players, and again, the offense needs to match this. So look, Tua doesn't have a strong arm, and something that I noticed even when he was playing well in the Arizona game, sometimes, man, the ball just floats on him outside the numbers. Once in a while, it's just a throw. When they did the throwback route to Gesicki against LA, that was a tight window the other side of the field. That's not an easy throw. I'm not killing Tua for missing that throw. It was accurate. He doesn't have the juice to do that. He needs.
Oh, you're talking about when the one where the guy came over top and
yeah.
Gesicki's
open there. A quarterback with a better arm fits that throw. That's not an easy throw. I'm not killing Tua for that. That's a very difficult throw from the opposite hash all the way to the other sideline. Difficult throw. But you need to develop an offense that accentuates the strengths of your quarterback. And I don't see the Dolphins doing that right now. Chan Gailey just doesn't seem like he's meshing with Tua's strengths right now. And I don't know if that's Gailey being bad. I don't know if that's the offensive line being bad. I don't know if that's having the wrong playmakers around Tua. But right now, what I see
what if it's all three, Dante?
Well, that's what I was about to say is I just see a disconjointed offense. I see a quarterback who doesn't have horrible pieces around him, but the offense itself isn't good. The offense is not good. I don't know how else to tell Dolphins fans this. The offense is not good, in my opinion, right? We don't score enough points on offense. We're the modern NFL, you need to score points on offense, and we don't do it. So we can sit here and kill Herbert for being inaccurate, and I'm not saying that he isn't, but they score a lot of points usually. I know they had a rough week against Buffalo, but comparing those offenses, one of them generates explosive plays and plays to the strengths of their quarterback. The other one is extremely conservative. And what happens when you're extremely conservative is your quarterback has to be on top of it at all times because the margin for error shrinks. Because if you're the Dolphins, you're conservative, right? They run the ball on first down. The running game sucks, so they get 2 yards. It's 2nd and 8. Well, now they're going to come out. Let's say they throw the ball on 2nd and 8, and it's a 9-yard comeback route to Akeem Grant, who's making contested catch despite the fact that he's 5'7", and he doesn't make that catch. Now you're in 3rd and 8. Now you've closed your playbook on a rookie quarterback with a bad offensive line. So again, the offense, you need to give Tua more shots, but more shots that he's good at. Let's throw the ball 20 to 25 yards in the intermediate areas. Let's get some crossing routes going. Let's get more RPOs on first down. Let's run rub routes versus man coverage.
I wanted to ask you that, Dante. Are you surprised? I wanted to ask you that, Dante, because I called the pistol. I did a show before he took over, and I said, okay, this is what I think. And I pretty much nailed what I thought the offense was going to look like, except one thing. And I wanted to ask you this. Are you surprised with how, Greer in January praised Chan Gailey as an RPO genius, as an innovator, and we had to listen to Chan Gailey in his Zooms in the preseason talk about how he adapted and he's going to be innovative and and then they go and they draft who a lot of scouts, but a lot of a lot of team officials who were involved with the draft for different teams thought in their report they viewed as the greatest or the best, let's call them, RPO quarterback they've ever seen at the collegiate level. And, when you compound things you're naming, look at the pressure. With pressure, you want to get the ball out quick, like you're talking about, right? More bootlegs, more designed runs, quicker rhythmic passing, slants, drags, mesh concepts, low drives, whatever you got to do, levels like we talked about. Are you surprised they haven't blended in more RPO? Because if you don't run the football, in the pass option, the ball's bam, bam out. And that's been the difference that's why Fitz moved the ball a little bit better at Denver. Not only did they stop with the 5-man stunts and even the 4-man stunts, stop sending that much pressure, but also he was getting the ball out a lot quicker. Shouldn't you be kind of by design forcing the ball out of his hand quicker, especially in games where you're seeing those kind of pressure?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely should, right? And like you want to help out the offensive line. Now, I do think the Dolphins get the ball out of Tua's hands pretty quickly. And I think they got the ball out of Fitz's hands pretty quickly. But the RPO thing is weird to me. I just pulled up my own article that I wrote when Tua was named the starter on Dolphins Talk, and I basically predicted what the offense was going to look like. And one of my big things is, hey, maybe we'll see some more RPOs because like Fitzpatrick's not very good at them. They
No.
tried it early in the season and they kicked it out of the offense quickly because like just not his game, and I get that. But Tua is, statistically speaking, the best RPO quarterback in the history of college football. It's not, and that's not a big group. It's not a big sample size because it wasn't a big part of offenses for a long time. But with that said, he's the best RPO quarterback in the history of college football. So it is very surprising. In 2018, Tua threw the ball on 51% of his RPOs, and the Alabama offense ranked first in the nation on yards per attempt on those plays. So again, the Alabama offense has great receivers, but Tua was dynamic in that area. In 2018 was the last season that he played full. That's why I used those numbers instead of 2019. But again, like,
Wow.
the RPO game is really important to his game. It was something that he did really well, and it's not a difficult concept either. I run RPOs in Madden. It's not hard. You can do that. So yes, I am surprised. I'm assuming there's a logistical reason for it. I tend not to assume that like they don't know these things, because if I know these things, they know these things.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there's a logistical reason for it. At least I'm hoping. I'm starting to get a little worried, not going to lie, but I'm hoping that there's a logistical reason for it. But I don't know what that is. I can't figure out what that is, because on an RPO, the offensive line's not a problem. It's not. The only problem you have to worry about is holding the ball too long and them getting upfield. You're not worried about their actual blocking. So again, like that's a big issue for me. I'm very surprised as well. I really hope they start to work it in, but we'll see, man. I don't know.
I wanted to get your opinion because I know a lot of us were worried, especially after this past game. But after the Denver game, Flores came out and he reaffirmed Tua as the starter. Then he popped up with obviously the thumb injury. Then after this game, even with the win, we can all admit Fitz didn't look very spectacular with that offense, and that shows that it's a deeper rooted issue than who the quarterback is right now. At least
Correct.
that's what I believe, because you got a 15+ year vet, and 5+ of those years are in this offense with Chan Gailey, and it looks that stagnant. It's a deeper rooted issue than the quarterback right now. But anyways, I wanted to get your thoughts on Flores, and because I go to people, I tell people it's been kind of a weird roller coaster. I mean, 1 week, he's trying to tell everyone, I don't think he's ready yet. I look at these players as my children, and if it was your child, and he wasn't, and I'm paraphrasing, and he was under a year removed, would you want? And you don't think you don't think he's ready yet in terms of, I guess, as a player, not physically, but as a player, would you want me to put him out there yet? And then the next week he's starting, right? Like, and this was all a couple weeks after Omar Kelly reported from what he had heard that a source close to the situation told Omar that this is like 2 weeks before he was named a starter. Omar said on X's and Omar that he was told by a source close to the situation that Tua knows at best 40% of the playbook. You look at now where he says he's going back to reaffirming that this is my guy. This is my guy. Do you think this whole quarterback situation has played out weird? Because I do. There's no certainty. Like, I know he's saying my guy, but like, it's been like, Herbert winning, they never look back. Burrow winning, they never look back. There was never uncertainty around the fan base. I do think he's the guy, but could you see where everyone's coming from, where, like seems like kind of an odd situation. And then on top of that, I just want to get your overall thoughts on Flores multiple weeks in a row reaffirming that Tua is his guy.
There's a lot there, I think, and I just want to quickly address where you started in that. Look, on the list of problems for me on this offense, whether it's Fitzpatrick at the helm or it's Tua at the helm, quarterback's like fourth. Like that, like there, I am significantly more concerned with the offensive line, the wide receivers, and the play caller. Now, moving on from that, Flores, I take everything Flores says to the media with a grain of salt. I'm going to be completely honest, because this is the same man who sat up on a podium last year and told me that Josh Rosen was the starting quarterback for the rest of the season and then proceeded to bench him the next game. So, like, again, I do not like what Flores says about the quarterback situation. I'm going to be honest. I just take with a grain of salt because he will say one thing and then do the opposite. And the problem that I have with the way that they've handled this situation is that if Tua, I would have preferred them to lie to me and tell me that they took Tua out of that game because of an injury. Because you can't tell me that you trust this quarterback, right? And you trust him, and he gives you Flores. When they put Tua in, what did Flores say? He said he gives us the best chance to win, right? That was his reasoning. Mm-hmm. And the national media freaked out because the Dolphins were 3-3, and they, for some reason, thought Ryan Fitzpatrick was good. And they freaked out, and they're like, well, Fitzpatrick's winning games. Tua can't possibly give you the best chance to win. Okay, and then Tua goes on a streak, right? He wins 3 in a row. He's playing bad against Denver, and then you take him out because all of a sudden Fitzpatrick gives you a better chance to win? Look, man, the quarterback position ain't middle linebacker. You can't just flip-flop these dudes like one of them gives you the best chance to win one week and one of them doesn't. That's not how the quarterback position works. It's either if you have 2 quarterbacks, you actually have 0. That's the saying because it's true. If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. And Flores is like, I take everything he says with a grain of salt because you can't say that Tua gives you the best chance to win and then you bench him against Denver. It doesn't matter how bad he's playing. He either gives you the best chance to win or he doesn't. Those are black and white issues. The quarterback position is not a gray area. You can talk to anybody who's done any level of scouting, and they will tell you that. That is not my opinion. That is how it's treated at the NFL level. You don't just bench starting quarterbacks who have earned that job and legitimately give you the best chance to win. You know, in college, guys get benched all the time because it's close and everyone's bad. But, dude, this is the NFL. So if you're going to come out and say, Tua gives us the best chance to win, let him give you the best chance to win. Yeah. And that's why it's weird to me. And then what's even weirder is when you watch the film, Ryan Fitzpatrick steps into the game and suddenly the play calling's competent. And you're just kind of like, and it's just weird. So that kind of goes to, I hadn't heard the Omar Kelly report about him only knowing 40% of the playbook. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe it is because theoretically speaking, it does explain a lot. It would explain why we run such a bland offense when he's in the game. But at the same time, if that's the case, if Tua only knows 40% of the offense, and this is what makes it additionally weird, how does he give you the best chance to win? So those things are mutually exclusive, right?
You know, and I know you watched the All-22. Think about, and you even saw in the Denver game with that small sample size of Fitz, think of how many 5-wide empty sets he was getting just in the Denver game because they wanted to spread the pressure out. They wanted to spread the defense out. They didn't want them to be able to commit compared to, and then you got Tua going under center most of the time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and then, you know, you're 110% right. Look at even Parker. You know, with Fitz, Parker goes back to running a lot more slants, a lot more shorter over the middle, like simpler stuff. Whereas on every Tua route, he's going deep, and you're hoping that the defender's handsy so you can draw a flag or something. Like it's crazy. Like even you know, you're 110% right, man. Because I just feel like when Tua's the starting quarterback, the play calling puts us in a position where we're asking him to bail us out on third down a lot more than when than what we end up asking Fitzpatrick to do. And it's not a talent issue thing. It's not that Fitzpatrick is better or more talented, man. It's not. It's the play calling does change up. Yes, a lot of the concepts stay the same. They're just called differently. Like, I just don't like, because you see the empty set, you see the 12-man with Tua, you just don't see it as frequent as when a guy like Fitz comes in, especially the empty sets. I noticed at least. You know, let's get back to the O-line here because, I mean, we're talking before we went live. You know, Robert Hunt right now, you know, before we went live, you're talking about how the Arizona Cardinals game against Marcus Golden, that was really your red flag for him with that bend and getting under the table, as you said. You Rayquan Davis. How impressed have you been with how he's come around? And then, let's talk about the rookies in the trenches. Robert Hunt, you've got a bigger sample size. Has your opinion changed? Is he a tackle, or do you still think he's a guard? And then on the flip side, another rookie in the trenches that you've gotten a bigger sample size of now, Rayquan Davis. How impressed have you been with him, especially these past 3 or 4 weeks?
Davis has been really impressive, and I was a guy who I didn't dislike that pick, but I also wasn't in love with it. And I know you were. I know a lot of Dolphins fans were, and so I'm happy to see that it seems like he's getting better. And he really seems like he's controlling the line of scrimmage. He seems like he's starting to figure out how to disengage consistently. I think he's been better with his hands. The thing with Davis, he's never had a problem with physical tools. He's big as hell. He's long as hell. He's powerful, and he's pretty quick for his size. So that was never an issue. It was trying to get him to put it all together, right? Like, let's get a rep where you set, push, and swim, right? Like stuff like that. That stuff was difficult for him, and it seems like he's trending in the right direction. What I would caution Dolphins fans in that, you can say that Rayquan Davis is really good, but how valuable is his role of being really good? And that's kind of the question. That's the problem that I had with drafting Rayquan Davis so high, in that what he does well, but what he does well isn't overly valuable to the grand scheme of a winning defense. So I think there's some context there. Look, the kid's playing great. I'm happy about it. Like Rayquan Davis, I love where his progression is going. If he surpasses what he does well and really becomes a consistent pass rush threat, that's a home run pick, right? So I'm not calling it. It's way, way, way too early, but the early signs are really good. So I'm really encouraged by what I've seen from Rayquan Davis, man. He looks like a dude. I think that was a good draft pick. I'm very happy about it. Awesome stuff. As for Robert Hunt, buddy, he ain't a tackle. It's just not. It's just not. He's not. I feel like
I agree with you.
Yeah, like, I don't know how to explain. I feel like I've explained this like 8 times now. It's just like not. He's not a tackle. He doesn't have the foot speed. He doesn't have the bend. Look, when you're going against a speed rusher, right? When you hear scouts talking about hips, right? You're probably like, what the hell are these guys talking about? When you see guys turn a corner, it's their ankles. Can they constrict their ankles, and having, right, that 45-degree angle with the tackle while their hips constrict as well as they go to turn that tight corner? Now, as the tackle, when you're bouncing out there, right, you also have to be able to constrict your hips and sink down so you don't lose leverage as you're getting out there into your kick slide. So, and Hunt, look, this is not let's wait for year 2 thing. That's not what this is. This is, buddy, he's not athletic enough. He never has been. It's not just going to magically appear. There's a difference between traits and technique. His technique could improve, right? But I don't think that's the primary issue. He's just not fast enough, and he's not bendable enough, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't think Hunt's a bad tackle. I don't. I think he's growing. I think he's learning. I think he could develop into an okay tackle. However, I think he can be a Pro Bowl guard. So you have to weigh your options. Would you prefer an okay tackle, which you might because tackle's valuable, or would you prefer a Pro Bowl level guard? Me personally, I'd prefer a Pro Bowl level guard to an okay tackle. I'd rather swing the bat in the draft again at tackle. Especially this year, I think we have a really good tackle class coming up. So this is not me killing Hunt as a player. I don't think that he's bad. I don't think that's a missed pick. I just think he's out of position. Now, look, he could develop into a solid tackle, and that's fine if that's what you want, if you're okay with that. Me personally, I think you kick him inside, and I think he becomes a mauler in there. I think he helps you generate, some better run blocking. We can't run block. People are complaining about the play calling, and they should, because it hasn't been good. But, and again, I like to throw the ball around the yard. I would run the ball as little as humanly possible, but you do have to be able to run the ball at some point. There is some level of running ability that you need to have, and the Dolphins don't have it. They haven't had it all year, really. And I think Robert Hunt getting kicked inside to guard, and you swing Kinley over to the other guard spot, and honestly, I would try Flowers at center. And I'd kick Harris out, and you get three. I'm not a huge Flowers guy, but you get three maulers on the interior, right? You have Jesse Davis at right tackle, who's not great, but whatever. We're gonna have to live with it for this year. And Austin Jackson at left tackle. You got three maulers in the middle. Try and run the ball that way. Again, if it's not successful, okay, go back. You can do it. You can reshuffle. But this is the year to figure out where guys should be playing. This is the year to figure out how good are these players and what positions they're in. Because next year, look, you're ahead of schedule right now. The Dolphins are not supposed to be this good, and they're ahead of schedule. So let's figure it out. We're playing with house money right now. You've got nothing to lose. So for me personally, I think Hunt's a guard. This is not a let's wait and see what happens. Athleticism doesn't just spawn out of nowhere. You either have it or you don't. And I don't think Hunt has it. Now, you can overcome it with technique and different things like that, but haven't seen that right now. So that's where I'm at. Really happy about Rayquan Davis. And I'm not unhappy about Robert Hunt either. I just think that there are some growing pains that he's going to have to go through. All three of the offensive linemen, the rookies, are going through it right now, man. Nobody's playing too hot at the moment. So they're all going through it. I think Hunt's a guard. I just do.
Yeah, and your Flowers take is quite interesting. I mean, before we get into it, what do you think they're doing with Dieter? I mean, because they haven't cut him, they're clearly grooming him at center. Do you think they're going to give that because Karras, I don't think is going to be back. He's been awful at times this year. And I mean, here's another thing, Dante. A lot of people don't realize it, and if they would have went back and watched the film, they would have seen. Hunt walked out with a little bit of a clean sheet this week because what you're talking about, the interior by Quinnen Williams is where we got feasted on. Jesse Davis, I don't know why they're not willing to just kick Hunt into guard, because Davis is a better tackle than he is guard. He's just not where he's looked lost at times. I wanted to get your opinion though. Penei Sewell, with the way everything's, I mean, if you want to listen to some people in draft Twitter, he won't even be in the top 15. I don't know what those people are on. I want to get some names for you. Let's start with tackle right now, okay? Because I agree with you. The guy who I love this year, if we're going to fill that right tackle spot, if we're not going to get Penei, is I really like Abraham Lucas. I want to get, at least I know he's a natural right tackle as well too. I want to get when it's crazy, Dante, I was watching some of these guys try to explain Penei is going to test better as a right tackle or a guard. I'm like, what are these people on right now? Anyways, I want to, I love Jackson Carman from Clemson. I like him a lot. Liam Eichenberg's all right. There's a couple other names I like. I want to get your thoughts let's look at beyond Penei Sewell. In your mind, either some left tackles you would kick to right, or right tackles that are in mind for you of that, and how high do you think we need to invest?
The last question's the interesting one for me, because I think that comes down to what we were just talking about in Robert Hunt. Robert Hunt is a key cog in this conversation, because if the Dolphins are satisfied with him as the right tackle of the future, then they're not going to invest at all. And that's what makes this conversation tricky. As far as some players that I like, outside of Penei Sewell, it doesn't seem like he's going to make it past that third pick with Cincinnati. It doesn't seem like they're going to move from that draft spot. So that's going to be upsetting. I really like Jackson Carman. I think he'd be a good fit here schematically. I want some more pop in this line, and I think Carman can bring that. He's a powerhouse. Yeah, he's a powerhouse. He's not the nimblest man in the world. He will get beat with speed at times, which I'm sure will frustrate people. And I get that, but at least he's got some pop that he can add to this line. And look, if he gets if he gets a little bit of, length on you, the rep's over, brother. That's the end of the rep, man. He does that. He does the swipe down thing where he just swipes and sits on dudes, so really powerful guy. I'd like to see some more pop in this line. So that's a guy that I would focus in on. Another one for me who's been a big riser this year is Christian Darisol from Virginia Tech. I think he brings a lot of both worlds to the table, where he's got a good amount of power and he's also a really good athlete that checks a lot of boxes. So he would be a guy that I would look at as well. I think he's really, really been impressive. He might be a top 10 pick. Whoever that OT2 is going to go really high. If I'm Miami, it depends which receivers are on the board, but like OT would probably be my second need for this team behind a separating receiver. So I would be willing to take an OT with the Houston pick. I would. Again, that's going to come down to whether or not Miami values Robert Hunt as the right tackle of the future. I don't know if they do. I hope they don't, because I think he could be a really good guard, and you can draft a really good tackle, and you can have 3 really good linemen instead of 2 okay ones. But I digress. So those are 2 names that pop up to me. And then Abraham Lucas is an interesting one because he fits the model of tackle that we saw them draft this year with Austin Jackson. He's much more of an Austin Jackson type player in that, right? Like he's nimble on his feet. He's very, very smooth in his pass sets. His pass sets are really, really nice, especially those short pass sets, which would go really, really nicely with what the Dolphins offense is doing. So I could see why you're attracted to him as a Dolphins prospect.
Blindside.
I like that fit a lot. And like you said, he's a natural right tackle, so you have that advantage in as well. So I could see that. And what would be nice about Lucas is that you presumptively, he's not going to be a first-round player. Presumptively. There's a lot of good tackles in this class. He's not going to crack that first round. So, he could. It's too early to say that, but I don't think he's going to. So that could be a good option as well. Some other guys that I would look at, Alex Leatherwood from Alabama. I think he's okay.
Yeah, I think he's overrated.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit overrated. If we take him in the second round, I'm okay with that. I think that's fine.
I agree.
He has tackle, guard versatility. Not someone I'm particularly interested in the first round. Dylan Raduns from North Dakota State University is super, super raw, but he's got a ton of potential. Really, really good athlete with a ton of really, really good power as well. So those would be some other names. The tackle class is not top heavy. There's not a lot of great tackles, but there's a lot of good tackles in this class. And that's why
Cosme?
Yeah, again, like Cosme is in the Abraham Lucas, Austin Jackson camp for me, right? Like this is a pass protector. This is a smooth mover athlete, good length, good size, struggles with power, right? Like he does not have a good anchor. He's going to get pushed back into the quarterback's lap a lot. And that's a similar issue that I see with Austin Jackson. So another conversation that we can have here too is Austin Jackson the prototype tackle for the Dolphins? Right? Like, is that what they want in that position? I don't know the answer to that question yet because he and Robert Hunt could not be more different as tackles. They are completely polar opposites. Hell, I think one of them's a guard. So, they could not be more different. So it's going to be interesting to see if the Dolphins view Hunt as the tackle of the future and if they view him as their prototype or if Austin Jackson's the prototype. Because you can't sit here and tell me that we have our prototype. It's Austin Jackson and Robert Hunt. Like, they have almost nothing in common besides the fact that they play tackle in name. So that's going to be interesting. Those are the names that I would highlight for the Dolphins. I really like Darisol and Carmen at the top, right? Like that would be like maybe if the Houston pick gets outside the top 10, I'd look at those 2 guys. In the second round, I think you look at Abraham Lucas. I think you look at Alex Leatherwood and you kind of go from there. But I would invest a top 50 pick in tackle this year. If it was me, I'd be willing to invest our highest pick in a tackle this year if I don't view Robert Hunt as the future.
I got a couple draft questions. Let's go to receiver here because you're talking about it. There's talk that Waddle is trying to get back for the playoffs. Do you think Waddle, if he comes back for the playoffs and he does the combine, do you think a guy like that is sitting there at 11? And I personally think Rondale Moore is not going to go high because of his size. I think that's going to be his downfall is his size. I don't think people are going to spend a top 10 pick in a 5'9" guy. I just don't see it happening. But if he was 6'1", the guy would be like a top 3 pick. It's like a crazy paradox. First of all, I've been in the camp of the 3 guys I want, even though I've told you personally and on here, Bateman's my wide receiver 1. The 3 guys that make sense to me are Moore, Devontae Smith, because of the chemistry. Obviously, you can make the argument that's to his favorite target ever. And then Jalen Waddle. Here's the question. Panay's gone. Jackson Carman and Christian Darisol are staring you in the face. So are all three of those receivers. What's your move at 11? And then what's your turnaround move in the early 20s?
I'm running the card with Jalen Waddle's name on it to the podium. It's not even a conversation for me. Waddle solves what I believe to be the biggest problem of the Dolphins offense. And I'll use blunt terms here. The offense ain't got no juice. And Jalen Waddle is a lot of juice in one player. And not only that, you have the natural connection between him and Tua that I think is really valuable for a rookie quarterback or a second-year quarterback then with a rookie receiver. And I think you can kind of look at what happened with Henry Ruggs, right? And Ruggs was, I believe he was the 12th pick. He was the first receiver off the board. He was either 11 or 12, right?
12.
To Vegas.
No, he's 12.
Yeah. Okay. So again, Waddle could be there at 11. And I think what's going to be interesting with Waddle in that Dolphins fans are going to expect him to come in and be this uber productive deep threat over the top guy. And he could be that. But what Waddle brings to the table that I think is so important, and what if you watch the Vegas film with Henry Ruggs and why he's worth the pick, it's less about his production and more of the fact that the defense has to respect him and cover the entire field. I cannot tell you how insanely valuable it is to force the defense to respect you at all three levels of the field. Nobody respects the Dolphins past 20 yards right now. I'm sorry. They just don't. The best chance we have is a 50-50 ball with Devontae Parker. Dudes aren't going to respect that. And so Waddle being able to pull the eyes of the safety, take two safeties with him, start bracketing those guys. Look at what Tyreek Hill does for the Chiefs, man. Yeah. I'm not going to say
player comp. That's actually my player comp.
And it would be unfair to expect Waddle to be as good as Tyreek Hill, but even if he's a third as good as Tyreek Hill, the attention that a player that explosive, that good demands opens up the offense for everybody else. It makes everyone else's life so much easier. So for me, I'm running the table with Jalen Waddle. Now we get into the late 20s. It depends what tackles are on the board. If Cartman's still there, if Darisol's still there, again, I'm running it to the table. But also in the 20s, I would probably start to consider maybe edge rusher. I would start to consider possibly if an elite guard had fallen.
What about if Creed Humphrey's sitting there?
Right. I was about to say that, right? If an elite interior player is there, if Wyatt Davis is still on the board, if Creed Humphrey's still on the board, I'd start to consider them as well. And that would be where I would go. So I would really like to go with a playmaking receiver in the top, with our top pick. I would like that to be Jalen Waddle. He's my top choice. It was Rondale Moore for a long time, but I have some serious concerns about Rondale Moore's durability, which isn't something that I can quantify in a number. But personally, I'm worried there's a difference between one injury and a lot of injuries. Jalen Waddle has one injury. Rondale Moore's never played a full season in his life. So that worries me. But again, Rondale Moore, let's say we take Darisol at 11 and we get Rondale Moore at like 22.
That's great value. That's
pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So there's some interplay there. I think you have to get out of the first round with a separation receiver. If it's Waddle, if it's Devontae Smith, if it's Rondale Moore, I'm okay with it, right? Like it's got to be somebody,
And we need that yak. We need that dynamic when the ball's in because I agree with you, Dante. DVP's the threat. You know why they also don't respect the jump ball, brother? Because they know when he comes down with it, it's over. There's no, that's no knock on DVP. That's his game. There's no, there is no yak threat on this team, and the one we have is 5'7", and the other one we have opted out, and he's sitting at home right now. And let me say this, Dante. You go get a Rondale Moore, you go get a Jalen, forget the other pick. Let's just focus on that. And you bring back Albert because you bring back Albert Wilson because you can now reinvoke that restructured contract because it's just been poked back a year. All of a sudden, you add that with DVP. All of a sudden, there's a lot of dynamic. You gotta see. Here's the thing, Dante. I think they need multiple natural separators with dynamic yak ability. I think you need at least 2. I think it needs to be DVP and then 2 of those guys, and then blend Gesicki or whoever you want, however you see fit. If you want to go with 4 sets, doubles or whatever you want to do. Like I think we need 2 of them, man. I legitimately think we need 2 of them.
I completely agree. And Albert Wilson is the one that intrigues me the most because I've seen it. I think him and Jalen Waddle is probably the best, right? Because, Albert Wilson's fast over long distances, but he's much more of a quick guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, so he's more of a traditional slot. And Jalen Waddle is just a blow the top off the defense, manufacture touch player, right? So those two complement each other extremely, extremely well. That's very, very interesting. And then outside of them, you have Preston Williams, Devontae Parker, who are traditional X receivers. So yeah, I agree. They need to reinvoke this receiver room. And it seems like they want to do that, right? Because we've seen them trade for Lynn Bowden. We've seen them feature Hakeem Grant. They draft Malcolm Perry in the 7th round. Like, it seems like they know that it's a thing that they need. They're just taking low cost investments, right? Like you get Lynn Bowden for, a late round pick and Rayquan McMillan. You take Malcolm Perry in the 7th. Albert Wilson opted out. That's unfortunate. So, and Hakeem Grant's been, I'm going to go with inconsistent to be nice. So they know that it's a problem. Now it's time to invest a high priority, high cost pick into that room to try and fix that problem. You've gone the way of let's try and hit on a guy who wasn't very good and maybe he'll be good in our system. We've tried that. Let's take a high cost pick. Let's get the ball rolling. I'm not particularly interested in wasting years of Tua's life trying to figure out who the slot receiver separation guy is. Yeah. Let's get these dudes in there. Let's spend a high pick and do that. I really like the Albert Wilson, Jalen Waddle pairing. I think that's a really good point you made. Those two complement each other very, very well.
And I got one more question before I get into another position of interest to me and my subscribers and a little bit of a train we've started over here. Let's talk just one free agent. Because we're talking about the subject right now, slot. Is Juju on the table for you, considering his kinship with Tua? They're pretty close friends, and he. Let's be honest, they're not going to re-sign him in Pitt. They're probably not even going to franchise him. They got so many people up right now, right? Deontay Johnson stepped up as well, but they got so many people they got to pay. He's probably not staying. Do you dabble, if you're management? Do you toy with the idea and do you stick your proverbial toes in the Juju Smith-Schuster water in free agency as your splash?
Here's the thing. Yeah, I definitely consider it. It's on my board. But I'm not particularly interested in making Juju Smith-Schuster one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL.
Agreed.
So if that's what it takes, if he's willing to take a middle of the pack contract, yeah, I'm all over it. But if he wants to be the highest paid, one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL, that's going to be a no for me, dog. So you gotta, for me, it's a price point thing. It's not an ability thing. The other thing too is getting into the ability, man, Juju just hasn't been as good as he was a couple years ago.
When Antonio was there.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's Antonio, I don't know if that's big. I don't watch the Steelers enough to know this. So I'm not going to talk out of my ass because I just don't watch enough Steelers film to know. But from a numbers standpoint, again, I'm box score scouting, which you should never do, but he just doesn't seem like he's as dynamic as he was before. Deontay Johnson seems to be a better slot there, and they've got James Washington who seems to get more touches, and it's just is Juju really that good? So it depends on the money. I'd rather pay Chris Godwin from Tampa Bay, if we're being honest. If I'm going to make a receiver the highest paid receiver in the league or one of the highest paid receivers in the league, I would take Godwin over Juju. But yeah, I would consider it. It just depends on the money, where, how much he wants to get paid and kind of where we're at as a team and where we think our needs are going to line up with the draft. Where that Houston pick is going to be a big deal as well. If I think I'm out of the range to get one of those top 3 guys, then maybe I consider overpaying Juju because I need that player, and that player is what I'm missing.
Like I said earlier, this is a channel where we support Tua. We're all in on Tua. I want this team to go all in on him too. I've been the Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith. They were the top receivers I told all my subscribers to keep an eye on, amongst others, but they were the top two. Let's talk about the running back situation. I'm pretty adamant. I think Travis Etienne is going to go higher than what I value him at. Let's put it that way. I think he's an amazing player, but I legitimately think you could be dealing with a top 15 pick, top 20 pick. I don't think he's worth that. I think if Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to go 28, 26, Travis Etienne is going to go higher than Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Let me just say that, all right? I'm kind of locked in more so value, but I really do love the player as well, on Najee Harris. Where do you see Najee Harris going? Where do you see Etienne going in terms of round value? And then beyond those two, I like the guys like Kenneth Gainwell. I know Hubbard's had a really tough year. I like Hill from Mississippi State. There's a couple other options, obviously, beyond there. Can you give some subscribers other options you've been looking at? And where do you think Etienne's going to go in this draft? Where do you think Najee's going to, and I'm talking about draft position, and talk about if you think Najee would fit what we're doing offensively.
Yeah, I'll start with Etienne, who I think is going to be my running back one for this year. You just don't find his burst naturally in football. He's really an insane athlete, all things considered. I did a mock draft with the guys over at the Draft Brawl last night. That was our last podcast. You can go check it out. We did not draft a running back in the first round. Now, I don't know if that's because we're draft nicks and we just refuse to draft running backs in the first round, or if that's actually a realistic thing that could happen. I could see Etienne going top 20. I think a team with the second first round pick. So Miami didn't do it last year, so I don't think they're going to do it this year, but I could see Etienne going middle to late first round or high second round. As for Najee Harris, I would like him in Miami. I would. I think that he is, first of all, a massive human being. Let's start there.
What do you see on tape with speed? Tell me what you see on tape with speed.
Well, I was going to get to that. He is fast enough, is what I'm going to say. I think that he has enough juice to be an effective runner relative to what is considered an effective runner these days. However, I do not think that he's fast. There's a distinction between fast enough and fast. Etienne's fast. Najee Harris is fast enough. But what Najee Harris, I think, does better than Etienne is that I think that he is a better downhill runner. I think he's more decisive. And I think he's a better pass catcher out of the backfield. And Etienne's improved in strides in that. But I've seen Najee Harris make back shoulder adjustments to throws at the pylon. So there's a certain degree of, hey, Etienne can catch a swing pass now versus, hey, Najee Harris just ran a legit route in the red zone against LSU in the biggest game of the year. So there's nuance to, hey, this guy's a good route runner. And and again, I don't think Harris is a great pass catching option, but I think he's a decent one. And that's something that's very valuable to me. I think if you're the Dolphins and you get Najee, the one thing that I worry about with him at the NFL versus the college level is I think he's a scheme specific back. I'm not particularly interested in running him out of the shotgun in the NFL. You can get away with it in college because defensive linemen aren't laterally quick as they are at the NFL level. And Najee's lateral movement ability is good for a man of his size, right? So talking context here, very, very good for a man of his size. However, in the grand scheme of lateral movement, he's not great. And there's some nuance there. So I worry about that. If you're the Dolphins and you draft him, he's a downhill runner. You want to turn around and give him the ball and let him get north to south, run some fools over, jump over some people, right? That's what you want to see Najee Harris do. So I do think he's a good fit for the Dolphins. I would like to see him in Miami. However, he would not even be on my first round board. Wouldn't take him. I would never, and again, that's just me personally. I'm never drafting a running back in the first round, and I'm never giving a second contract to a running back. I don't care who they are. I don't care what they've done for me. They're out. You get 4 years. I'm going to franchise tag you twice. You're gone if you're still productive. That's just the way it has to be. So, again, I like Najee. But, again, Najee doesn't solve the problem of not running the football. And this is where I come back to, if I can draft an offensive lineman, like, at the high of the, at the start of the second round, I would rather draft a offensive lineman there to improve my running game and then draft a worse running back in the third or fourth round. Yeah. That's where I'm at with it. So, like, again, I think the problem's up front with the line. So I like Najee Harris. I'd love to see him in a Dolphins jersey. I think he's a very good running back, a very, very good running back prospect. But for me personally, the way I would build the team, I would draft linemen who can run block and then draft a running back at the back of the draft. Buddy, James Robinson for the Jaguars is like third in the league in rushing. Dude's an undrafted free agent out of Ball State. Like, there are some things here. So again, I like Najee. I will not complain if the Dolphins draft Najee Harris in the second round. It's a great pick. I love the kid. I'll root the hell out for him. I think he's awesome. I love watching him play football. However, I think there's a better way to build a team. That's just me. I will not be mad about Najee Harris. I think he's a great prospect. I really like him. I'm just a different way.
What do you think about a kid like CJ Verdell in the mid to late rounds?
Verdell's interesting. I think he can be more of a
screen pass king.
Yeah, he's more of like a committee guy. For me, I think if you're drafting Najee, you're expecting him to hold the load, right? So I think that.
So who do you see? Who would you target then? If you look past Etienne and Najee, let's say you get your receiver and you get an offensive lineman, and then you get your tackle, and then you double up and you get your interior guy as well, your center. Now you're coming back with that second round pick. You're at the end or in the third round or beyond. Who are you looking at in terms of, I know you like Kenneth Gainwell a lot. And so do I. Who are the other guys you like in terms of beyond the big recognizable names?
Well, Gainwell's an interesting one. He's the best pass catching back I've ever scouted. This man runs legitimate routes like a slot receiver. I think he could be really interesting. Javonte Williams from North Carolina is a name that I really, really like. Explosive in short areas, not an overly fast guy, but he keeps the offense on schedule. Another name that I've been on for like 2 years now is Jarrett Patterson from Buffalo. I think he's really, really interesting. Built like a bowling ball. I think he's really, really fun. Keeps the offense on schedule. He reminds me of Frank Gore in that he's not as good as Frank Gore. Frank Gore is one of the best running backs I've ever seen. But running style wise, you look up and Jarrett Patterson's 2 yards behind the line and it doesn't look like he's going to get any yards. You look down, you look back up, and he's got 6 yards. He just finds a way to pick his way through the line and kind of gets, he's got really, really good contact balance. And I feel the same way about Javonte Williams and Kenneth Gainwell. And the reason that those backs are so appealing to me is because they are effective without a dominant offensive line. And again, I'm not saying Najee Harris wouldn't be, right? Like, I think Najee Harris is still effective without a great offensive line, but I probably have to spend a top 50 pick on Najee Harris. Let's say, because here's the thing, when I'm grading out running backs, right, for me, I don't care about total yardage. Going to be honest, do not care. I care about yards per an attempt. How many yards do you get me per an attempt? Najee Harris, Jarrett Patterson, and Williams, they're all in the same sphere. They are. And again, when you get into the analytics of that and breaking down the running back position, I care more about that stuff. Najee Harris is flashier. He might be better as an overall prospect, but I might be able to get the same production out of Jarrett Patterson, Myles Gaskin, and Salvon Ahmed, those three guys, spending all day 3 picks and no money and invest heavily in my offensive line, which not only can open up running holes, but now protect my starting quarterback. So again, it comes down to, how do you want to build a team? There's conflicting ways to do it. I'm okay either way. I'm not going to complain either way, but those are some guys that I would target in the 3rd or 4th round instead of spending a top 50 pick on Najee. But again, that's just me. You can draft Najee at 50. He can go out and be awesome. He's a great pick. He's a great player. But again, it comes down to how you want to build the team. I would focus more on those guys. That's just the way I would build the team. I think this is a deep running back class. I think you can get productive guys late. And I think Myles Gaskin and Salvin Ahmed are usable backs. And you can kind of support this system around. If the offensive line opens up more holes, the running backs will look better. And the offensive line also protects my quarterback. So that's kind of where I'm at. Other people are going to go different ways, and that's okay. We'll see what the Dolphins want to do.
I want to get your opinion on another position too, because we're talking about him earlier in terms of Rayquan Davis. I think we still need to find that 2-down run stuffing, gap filling, nose tackle, that true zero tech where, we can flank him with Wilkins and Rayquan Davis to his right and his left. And then on run situations on 3rd down, we can put Rayquan back in the middle there. In pass situations, put him right back into the middle there. I really like Tyler Shelvin a lot from LSU. I think he's perfect. And you won't have to spend high capital on him, because he opted out and all that. But what do you think about what I just said in terms of finding that, that 2-down, gap filling, run stuffing, nose tackle, that zero tech? And are there any other guys beyond Tyler Shelvin you see as potentially filling that role if they miss out on him? Because the guy I like this year was Leaky Fatu, the kid in Arizona, because he was going to be late round 2. You know what I mean? It was going to be high. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I do think we need a nose tackle. And that was kind of where I projected Rayquan Davis to do for this team. And it just doesn't, it kind of seems like they're trying him there still. I don't know what the defensive line is kind of odd when you really study them as far as where they line up and their percentages and whatnot. But yeah, I think Tyler Shelvin would be really good. I think he's the best nose tackle in this class. And for me, he is a pure nose tackle. There's been some talk of him going in the 1st round. I don't see that. I hope that that's not the case.
I see third.
Yeah, I actually already filed his final film report for me. He got a 4th round grade for me.
Okay.
That's where he's going to rank. So, and again, like the 3rd, right? Like 3rd, 4th, whatever. It's all relative. He goes in the 3rd, whatever.
Yeah.
I could see that being a good pick for us, just because if you look at the style of defense that we run all across the league, right? Like Danny Shelton has made a bust in the 1st round. But you know what he does? My man eats space for days, and he's a really good run defender. And he's made an absolute living with Detroit and with New England being that guy for this defense. And I think the Dolphins are missing that. One thing that is really interesting is that if you get a nose tackle who is a true game changer in the middle, like Vita Vea for the Buccaneers, buddy, you want to see some good nose tackle film, go watch Vita Vea from earlier this season. He changed the entire complexity of that defense. He allows the linebackers to flow cleanly, which is huge for someone like Jerome Baker, who's never seen a block that he wants to take on. And you can free up these linebackers to go and run around and make plays. So a really, really good nose tackle would be nice. Now, again, that's a player that I value on day 3, though. Again, like it's a good complementary piece, but I like what the Dolphins have up front. I like Rayquan Davis. I like Christian Wilkins. I really like Zach Sealer as well. So again, I think we could use one for sure, but that's not something I'm going to invest a high pick in personally. That's something that I'm looking at in the 4th round. So I'll pull up my defensive tackle notes real quick. I give you a couple other names. Because for some reason I'm blanking. So let's see.
Because Devon Godchaux is going to be gone too. So there's not even going to be a lot of depth. And I know someone in the comments right now is like, don't give up on Rayquan Davis. He's a rookie. No one's talking about giving up on Rayquan Davis right now.
Absolutely
This
not.
team does not have a 2-down run stuffing, zero tech, gap filling nose tackle. And that's what you need in a 3-4 defense, man.
I agree. Yeah. And 2 other names that I would throw out. One is Kairos Tonga from BYU. He is absolutely massive. He is listed at a whopping 6'4", 322. He might be taller than that, if we're being honest. He has really, really good power. He's a good run stuffer. The other one, Alim McNeil from NC State. He's pretty interesting. He's kind of built like a bowling ball type player for them. He's 6'2", 315. He plays that kind of two-gap scheme that they like at NC State. I think he could be an interesting day 3 option. He's really improved this year as well. So those are two guys that I would target beyond Tyler Shelvin if he does end up going higher than we think. But yeah, I think this is a place where the Dolphins could improve that defensive line. I think this is the only piece that you're missing. I think Rayquan Davis is a great piece. Well, we could talk about the edge. I'm talking about the interior. The edge, I think they need two players there, if we're being honest. But the interior guys, I think that kind of fills that out. You've got that covered. You've got young, really good players on the interior, and then you got to kind of figure out what you're doing with the edges.
See, I think we need an interior linebacker more than we need an edge right now. I don't think we have that true. I don't think we have a field general. I don't think they're using Van Noy more outside in than inside out right now. Jerome Baker, let's be honest, he's best utilized on the line of scrimmage, whether it's rushing off the edge, rushing between tackles, shooting the gap, whatever the case may be. He's doesn't really have the smarts. I kept hearing all these years about people saying he's so good in coverage, but I can show you film and I can show you numbers that don't back that statement up. That is a bull-faced lie, my friend. So I want to go into this because this is my next question. I know that we'll talk. I love the guys at 3 yards per carry. I think they do a fantastic job. The hype that Xavien Collins from Tulsa is getting, I still have Dylan Moses as my 2 behind Micah, but I have Nick Bolton as my number 3. His last 4 games, he's had 6.5 tackles for a loss and 2 sacks. Do you think Xavien Collins is he passing Nick Bolton, a guy like Nick Bolton for you? I think he looks more refined than a guy like Chaz Surratt, and that's clearly because Chaz hasn't played the position for long enough. But are you buying into the Xavien Collins hype? And do you think middle linebacker is as pressing as a need that I think it is?
I think as far as is that a pressing need? I think in a bubble. It definitely is. I'm not a huge Jerome Baker guy, and I don't think Kyle Van Noy is the long-term answer. The question that I have to ask myself is, where do I value that position in the draft? And that becomes difficult where I don't know if I value that in the first round, even if I need it. And that kind of goes back to the same thing I was talking about earlier with the running back, in that there are a lot of good linebackers who go on day 3. And the linebacking is kind of the running back of the defense, in that they're just not as inherently valuable as other players. So for me, I don't know where I would track that, but Xavien Collins, I'm buying into that. This is a very good football player. I did a write-up on him on bluechipscouting.com. You can check it out. I did the entire Tulsa defense, some brief scouting thoughts on them. They have a lot of NFL talent on that defense. So if you guys haven't watched Tulsa, I know that sounds ridiculous.
I've had to because of the Xavien Collins stuff, brother.
A lot of NFL talent on the Tulsa defense. I wrote up Collins, I guess about 3 weeks ago now. Look, man, he's built like a Patriots linebacker. He looks like Dante Hightower, but he moves like Jerome Baker a little bit. And that is in the realm of special player.
Brother, that pick 6 to end that game a couple weeks ago.
Exactly. Right. And Jordan Reed posted of the Draft Network, a great draft analyst. If you don't follow him, you should. He did a video compilation of some of Collins' best reps in coverage. My man's flipping his hips, he's turning, and he's doing, his back pedal looks really smooth, and he's like 6'2", 215. He's a big dude. He's not, I love Chaz Surratt. Chaz Surratt's like one of my guys. I love watching Chaz Surratt play football, but I expect him to be that good of a mover. That's the way he's built. He's a former quarterback. dude, like Collins is built like Hightower, but he moves so well for the position. So yeah, I'm big on the Xavien Collins train of not only is he a very, very good linebacker in this class, but he's a perfect fit for the Dolphins. I don't know, he might have played himself to be too high for Miami, where they just might miss him in the way the draft works out and the way they prioritize their needs. But yeah, I'm a big Collins guy. I think that I think that he can fill that role. And I really like Nick Bolton too. I really like this linebacker class. I'm being
So
honest.
do I love it,
I
man.
think,
So
yeah,
fun to watch.
this is a strong linebacker class. I
Yeah.
really, really enjoy it. And Nick Bolton's fun. However, what I worry about with Bolton is that he's not a Mike. That I think he's a Will or a Sam, probably a Sam at the next level, I would say. So if you want that field general type player, I don't think Nick Bolton's your guy. I think you're looking at Dylan Moses, Micah Parsons at the top. You know, Moses actually hasn't played very well this year, but I think you're looking more at him.
You don't see Micah more as Micah more, especially in this defense, lined up outside more. I don't see him running the Mike in this.
I think you could play him either way. And that's what makes Micah so appealing at the top of the draft, right? Like when I was talking earlier, I was saying how I don't value linebacker typically, but what makes Micah so appealing is that, like you just said, and you make a really good point, is that he can be an outside pass rusher and he can play like 3 different positions and different things like that. So he's more of a unicorn type player. But
you know what he is, brother? You remember how last year no one knew what position Isaiah Simmons was?
Mm-hmm.
That's what Micah Parsons is, but you just don't know what he is as a linebacker. You know he's a linebacker. He can just be wherever you want. Like he can be in a more elite version. I think his floor, if you want me to, people have asked, what do you think his floor is? I think his floor is a far more elite version of Jerome Baker. That's what I think his floor is right now.
I like that. Yeah.
So, but I think his ceiling is like, we're talking like poor man's version of Lawrence Taylor type of ceiling. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's where you're going right
Taylor,
there.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I've told people, I said, I think in year one, Dante, he would be used more like how Jerome Baker's used right now, just because he'd give you way better production and you could do more stuff with him with what they're asking of Jerome Baker. But I do agree with you, in year 2 or year 3, I think Micah becomes that Mike for 110%. But I do think you're right too. I think Dylan Moses is that true at the top right now.
If that's the linebacker spot you're willing to fill, I would take a look at Moses. He hasn't played overly well.
Yeah.
So that's why I threw Parsons' name out there, because like if you really want that Mike and that's the position you want him to be, you can turn him into that if you want to. And I don't know, I'll throw something out at you, and I want to hear your opinion on this. So I'm flipping the script on you. I think Brandon Jones is like the second best linebacker on the team, if we're being honest. So I'm kind of curious, like, you know, I don't know, like, what do you think about Brandon Jones firstly? And like, because I think he's a linebacker. I mean, he basically is. He pretty much plays linebacker, for being honest.
You know what's funny? I actually compared to how I thought they were going to use him as like a Mark Barron type of hybrid linebacker when we're talking about early on, especially like when we're going heavy DB sets and stuff like that. Ideal role for him. Yo, man, Brandon Jones, I get why they drafted him at 70 now. Let's say that. That was the one pick where I was kind of like, but you know, wow. I mean, Van Noy at times has been a disappointment, even just coming down to missing tackles, and his angles have been poor at times this year. Landon Roberts, to his credit, is getting better week by week.
He's a one-trick pony.
I agreed 110%. No, yeah, you might be right in terms of versatility. In terms of versatility alone, you might actually be right.
Yeah.
If you actually think about versatility, think of it. You know, what, Van Ginkel maybe? We didn't see what Beagle is going to turn out to be. Yeah,
and I consider them more to be like edge players.
Edges, yeah.
You know, and Jones is pretty much like he's a missile with no guiding system. Like you have to point him in the right direction and tell him to
Man.
go. But man, when he gets it
His
it right,
downhill speed, brother,
woo,
he's
yeah.
gone, man.
Yeah. So I don't know. I like Jones as like a linebacker type player.
Mm.
And again, like, I mean, it comes down to where do you value linebacker? I agree with you. It's a big need on this team for sure, right? Linebacker's not great. I'm not talking about the edge guys. I love Van Ginkel. I love Beagle before he got hurt. I'm talking about the true linebackers, the sideline to sideline dudes. That's a big need.
And we don't even have a lot of them in just depth-wise,
I know,
right?
I know, right? But again, like, where do I value that? Like, I don't know. I'd rather draft Najee. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm at the top of the second round and I've already taken my wide receiver and my tackle, and I'm between those two, I'd rather draft Najee. You know what I mean? And like, so it kind of comes down to where they value it. But this is a good class. Like, we're both excited about this class. I don't know. I would explore Brandon Jones as a primary linebacker as kind of this slot nickel player. The kid's name is slipping my mind. Never mind. If I think of it, I'll say it. But like, it's a modern position. You brought up Mark Barron, right? Like that type of player, man. Like that's fun for me. I think that would be perfect. So I really like Brandon Jones. But again, like linebacker, I just have a tough time drafting that position high. Like you have to be a really, really, really high impact player to
Would you
justify
take Parsons
that.
top 10? Would you take Parsons if he's there at 11?
Yes, because he's a very good pass rusher. And
Yeah.
I think that is where he makes up the value and what makes him unique as compared to Xavien Collins, as compared to Nick Bolton and Dylan Moses, right? Because he can rush off the edge. He's an extremely good blitzer, and he's also a very, very good linebacker. So I would
And he's so
consider him.
instinctual, my friend.
Yeah,
Like,
it's crazy because, like, Parsons does things where it's like, man, I don't know if you just guessed correctly or you just actually watch way more film than you probably should, because, like, this dude just shows up places he just absolutely should not be. And it's crazy watching his film where, like, they'll do all this junk in the backfield and they'll throw like this backdoor screen, and Micah Parsons is like right there as if they ran no misdirection. And it's like, how did you even know that was coming? So like, he just does stuff that's like really, really impressive in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I would consider him high, but like, again, it's a good linebacker class. So I would try and use it at its depth and try and fill in the pieces of, let's try and get something out of Jerome Baker. Let's get something out of Brandon Jones. These dudes have ability. And then the linebacker position is a huge, huge need. But again, I have a problem investing prime resources in that spot.
Agreed. Guys, we got 171 people in the room right now. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new here. Dante, I wanted to ask you a couple more things before we get out of here, because I've already taken up almost an hour and a half of your time. The running game is banged up. We've got really no big names across the board. Brady looked like he was getting something going. Then he got a case of the fumbleitis. Then Laird's caught the virus too because he wasn't wearing his mask. And then, I got to ask you, we talked about the offensive line. All right. We talked about that. We talked about Chan Gailey. I've said to Dolphin fans, I want the playoffs. We all want the playoffs. The realistic fan in me, not even fan, the realistic objective analyst in me says it's going to be bad news if we make the playoffs, because I think this team's going to get exposed offensively unless things turn a corner real quickly here, because like everyone else does, it's a whole different ball game. The playoffs, it's a different season. Windows get even tighter. Pockets collapse even faster, et cetera, et cetera. I want to get your thoughts of, as of today, if you were to the playoffs were to start today, we are the number 6 seed and we'd be playing in Tennessee right now. Okay, because they're the number 3 seed. Derrick Henry. Okay, you got right now. We just had 2 legitimate number 1s, and Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon light us up for 180. We've seen what running backs could do. Do you think this team, the way it's built right now, if it goes to the playoffs, might get exposed in the first round?
If the matchup is Tennessee, yeah. I could not think, and I did not know that before you just told me. So off the top of my head, I cannot come up with a worst possible matchup for the Dolphins in the first round of the playoffs than the Titans. The one weakness of this defense, which is extremely, extremely good, and I love this defense. I love what we're doing. The one weakness of the defense is that they do not stop the power run well at all. At all. And that is exactly what Tennessee does really freaking well. So for me personally, that would be the worst matchup that we could get outside of like KC, because I think they're just freaking insane. So I would rather play Buffalo. I'd rather play the Steelers, honestly, which I know sounds ridiculous, but I would. I'd rather play, obviously, the Colts or the Browns. So that's probably the worst possible matchup. As for the offense, look, man, we need to come up with something that just works consistently. I don't know what that is. We can't create space for anybody. And that's the running game, that's the passing game, that's the receivers, the tight ends. It's just everything is so hard to create space, to create explosive plays. We're not an explosive offense. We don't threaten anybody. Nobody's threatened by this offense. As much as I love Tua, I adore Tua, right? He's just not threatening right now, and that's not his fault. It's the things around him, and that's what I said earlier when I said that the quarterback is fourth on my issue list of the offense, right? It's not Tua's fault, but like we're just not explosive. We're not threatening. What are the best teams right now threatening, right? Like we can crap on the Titans all we want and make fun of Ryan Tannehill. Ha, ha, ha. He's playing like an elite quarterback right now. That's the truth of the matter. He's explosive as hell. He's generating big plays. The offense is great, and Derrick Henry runs down people's throats. They've got a formula. What works? The Chiefs have a formula. What works? Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback of all time. That formula is easy. You can move on, right? You can go down to the Bills. We can make fun of Josh Allen all we want. Dude's playing really good football this year, and he killed us when we played him the first time.
Yeah.
So we can make fun of Josh Allen, and that's totally fine, but he's really good. Buffalo's figured it out. They know what they do really well. I don't think the Browns are particularly good at 8-3, but they figured it out. They know what they do really well. They run the football really, really well, and they run the play action off of that with Baker, and they ask Baker to do as little as humanly possible. I don't know what the Dolphins are good at. I
don't have an identity, right?
Yeah, right. There's no identity with this team. It's just we're going to do some stuff, and it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't. And it's very, very, very frustrating because, as good as, I think the Dolphins are better than the Browns. I think I think they can beat Buffalo. I think they could beat the Colts. I think they can hold their own with the Steelers. I don't know if they win that game, but I think they can hold their own. But like when you get to the playoffs, especially on offense, you need to have a go-to thing that you are good at that you can get at any time from any place. For the Titans and the Browns, that's Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry and Baker Mayfield and Ryan Tannehill's play action passing. For the Chiefs, it's Patrick Mahomes God mode, right? The Dolphins don't have that. There's nothing that they have that frightens me consistently as a defense. And that's not Tua's fault. It's not to say Tua is bad. It's just that
we're not ready. We're not there yet.
We're not there yet. We're ahead of schedule. And this is something that I've been trying to tell Dolphins fans for so long, is especially after the Denver game, people were losing their freaking minds. And I was like, guys, if I told you at the end of last season that we would have a winning record through 11 weeks and be in the playoffs, would you have been happy? And the answer is almost always yes.
And we
drafted Tua, right? Yeah. Like you would have been like over the moon with that. Yeah. And I think people need to recalibrate their expectations of this team. This team is ahead of schedule. They are not supposed to be as good as they are, and it's great that they are. But again, in the playoffs, if things don't turn on the offense, right, they're going to get exposed. They are. And that's just the way playoff football is different. The offense needs to get better. They need to find an identity, and it's not pounding the rock. It's not establishing the run. Open up the offense for the 5th overall pick and let them throw the ball around the goddamn yard. Yeah. If it doesn't work, you can always go back. You know what I mean? Like, let the kid throw. And I think that should be the identity of the team. And the offensive line limits you and the playmakers. I get it. There's no perfect version of this where the Dolphins just wake up one day and all of a sudden they've got an offensive identity. But they got to try stuff, do different things. And they're just not doing that right now. And that's what's so frustrating to me.
Yeah. All right, man. I got a couple of award things I want to ask you before we get out of here. First,
All right.
let's start with Brian Flores. If Mike Tomlin, because they got a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way. If Mike Tomlin and the Steelers don't go 16-0 and we make the playoffs, do you think Brian Flores should be in legitimate? I know we have our gripes about how he handled the quarterback. Just sometimes I guess it goes back to the Minka thing. Sometimes just how he handles players makes you scratch your head. But do you think he should be in a Coach of the Year candidate? If we all know if Tomlin goes perfect, he's winning it. But if Tomlin doesn't go perfect, do you think Flores should be in the conversation with what he's done with this roster?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think what he's done with this roster has been fantastic. And obviously, assuming that the Dolphins do make the playoffs and they finish with like 11-5, 10-6 record, I think is pretty obtainable at this point. Yeah, I think he should definitely be in the conversation. I don't think he'll win it over Mike Tomlin. I think the Steelers at worst are going to be like 14-2 or 15-1. So I don't think he's going to win it. But yeah, he should definitely be in the conversation. And we talked a lot. I like Brian Flores. I think he's a good head coach. I just think he's not perfect, and I think that's okay as well. So, we'll kind of see where that goes. I think Flores is probably like a top 3 candidate. I would say easily. I think he should get those votes. If he doesn't, I'll be disappointed.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, brother, actually 2 things. We'll finish up finally with awards. The last one ain't going to be much. It's going to be more of your gut feeling. The last one before we get into your gut feeling, Xavien Howard. Everyone's Pro Bowl. I'm over here saying All Pro. I'm not trying to hear that Pro Bowl. Pro Bowl is a popularity contest. You know what I mean? The fact that Rodrigo Blankenship is beating Jason Sanders right now should tell you everything you need to know about the Pro Bowl right now. Xavien Howard, is he an All-Pro to you? And dare I say, if he sticks around and in 2-3 years we're an AFC Championship contending team, are we watching a Hall of Fame career in front of our eyes? Because this guy, let's put it into context here, Dante. Most interceptions when you go back to 2017, and he missed a full season, brother. He's only, other than Jake Scott, other than Sam Madison and I believe Anderson, he's the only other Dolphin to have multiple 7 interception seasons. I mean, Xavien Howard, first of all Pro this season. Second of all, Defensive Player of the Year candidate this season. And third of all, are we potentially, if we become a legitimate contender and he sticks around, are we legitimately seeing a Hall of Fame career blossom in front of our eyes, man?
Wow, that's a lot. All Pro, I'm on board. I think he should definitely be in the conversation. I'd have to get more into how much he's actually giving up. I don't think it's a lot. I think he's towards the top in coverage percentage and different things like that. So I'd want to get more into that. But the numbers I think are certainly there. And the play on film, when I watch the film, he certainly seems like he's playing at the highest level that you can play at as an NFL corner. So yeah, I'm on board with the All Pro train. The Pro Bowl is stupid. I don't even really care about the Pro Bowl. I think it's dumb. They should get rid of it. I don't even know why it exists. It's dumb. So, but All Pro, yes, definitely on board with that. Hall of Fame, look.
Ooh.
Here's the thing. I think it's possible, only because he puts up numbers, right? Like if the Hall of Fame is a lot more of a popularity contest than people think it is. And you have to have numbers. You have to have the stats to get into the Hall of Fame. And Howard, look, if he keeps intercepting as many passes as he is right now, and it's over the course of the next, he's going to have to do it longer. He's going to have to do it probably for the next 6 to 7 years to get into that conversation. So we're way ahead of schedule, but I appreciate the boldness. I love it. Look, if he continues on this trajectory, as far as he's towards the top of the NFL in interceptions every single year, and it's like above 6 interceptions every year, and he's towards the top of that list, yeah, he's going to have a shot, man, because he's going to be like top 10, top 15 all time. And people care way more about that than film when it comes in the Hall of Fame, which makes me sad, but it's true. Not to say that Howard's film is bad. It's not. It's good. But, again, yes, I think he if he keeps on this trajectory, yeah, he'll have the numbers. So Howard's awesome. I think he should be in consideration for an All-Pro. If he continues to play like this for his whole career, yes, he could be a Hall of Famer.
And just some things to back it up in terms of the All-Pro this season, opposing quarterbacks have a 50.3 passer rating when they've targeted him this season. And in terms of historically, so he has 19 interceptions in 51 games, okay? So that gives him one of the best interceptions per game rates in NFL history. Right now it's 0.37. And just to put it into context, some great interceptions per game rates. Charles Woodson had a 0.26. Ronnie Lott had a 0.33. Rod Woodson had a 0.30. Darrell Green had a 0.18. Deion Sanders had a 0.28. Champ Bailey had a 0.24. And the Island, Darrell Revis had a 0.20. So, I mean, hey, you're right. If he keeps it up on this trajectory. So, I just want to get your final thoughts before we get out of here, Dante. Tua, he's got the update today is he's got tape around the wrist, tape on the thumb. He was limited again for 2 days in a row. Final thoughts heading into now week 13 and the back half of the season, the hardest month of the season, December. And what's your gut feeling on if Tua goes this weekend?
I think he plays. I'm a little bit biased because I will be at the game, and if I have to watch Ryan Fitzpatrick in person, I'm going to be very sad. So I think he goes. I hope he goes. And look, the Bengals defense is really bad. They're not good. So I want to see some damn numbers this week if he goes. Like, I don't want any of this 11 of 22 for 122 yards and a touchdown. Not interested. The Bengals defense is bad. Let the kid play football. I think he goes. I think they play well. I think they win. The Bengals don't scare me. They're going to score like 6 points or something. So I think he goes. But look, if Fitzpatrick plays, I guess I wouldn't be overly surprised. But at that point, if Fitzpatrick plays, I mean, man, I do not want to be on Dolphins Twitter.
Yeah, I know.
I'm just going to opt out of Twitter for the day. Man, that's going to be a mess. Especially after Flores is like, Tua's the guy all week. Yeah. So I don't know. I think Tua's going to go. I don't think the thumb is that bad. I think
it came out today. He's a game days. They came out today that he's a game time decision.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to do that. Flores has this like old school Patriots thing. I don't want to give the other team the advantage of knowing who the quarterback is. Brother, it doesn't really change that much between Tua and Fitz schematically. Like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like you're putting out Lamar Jackson or Tua. Like, they got to account for someone's legs or like whatever. But I think Tua goes. But that's just a hunch. I have zero inside information. And Brian Flores is not exactly reliable when it comes to who's playing quarterback. So we'll see.
Yeah. And you know what? I think it's the perfect situation to put him in, especially if he's going to be going against Kansas City. Get his feet wet because the defense against Brandon Allen is going to put him in positions to be successful. And you know what? I don't think a 20 of 25 for 250 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns and 0 picks game is out of the realm of possibility if he's good to go.
That's what it should be.
Yeah, I agree 110%. Dante, before we get out of here, I just want to thank you again, man. This is almost an hour, 45 minutes, and that absolutely, bro, that actually flew by. So fun to talk ball, so fun to talk Dolphins with you, man. And I know the comments, we got 170 people in the watching live right now. I know everyone's just loving your insight. Appreciate you for coming on yet again, my friend. Can't wait until the next time you come back on. And guys, if you need to go follow him on Twitter, he's a great follow. You can find his Twitter link linked below in the description. It's at Dante Collinelli. And like I said, you can find his work on Blue Chip Scouting, on Dolphins Talk. and also on the Brawl Network with the Draft Brawl. He's one of the guys I trust when it comes to the draft more than these Mel Kipers and that nonsense. Him and the homie Matt Valdivinos, I trust them a lot more than those fools getting paid at ESPN. Let me tell you all that. Appreciate you, homie. And guys, I'll be back tomorrow night with JoeyShotz, and we'll be previewing the Bengals and the Dolphins game. And until then, you already know what time it is. It's Fins Up all day, every day. I hope everyone stays happy, healthy, stay safe, and y'all stay blessed.